Hello and welcome to Positive Fandom. I'm your host, Mmmm, and today I'm joined with Catherine Cooke, who has joined us many times before to review episode 6, chapter 6 of season 1 of The Mandalorian, The Prisoner. How are you today, Catherine?
Great, you too?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Any day that you can talk Star Wars is a great day. Um, so we're talking about Mandalorian season 1. This is chapter 6, The Prisoner. And I really loved this episode so much. We got introduced to so many more characters. And we actually just got to see characters just sort of other than human characters, kind of corresponding and moving around in ways that I don't think we've really seen before. So this episode to me was such a treat. And overall, the series has kind of been doing this. So, the episode starts off with Din arriving in the space station to meet Ranzar Mike. And boy, the Razor Crest looks incredible coming into that cargo bay of the space station. And, it's just so amazing. It looks so good. And I think they did a great job. Of course, it feels very much like Star Wars to me. What did you think of it?
It rivals the stuff that you see in the big budget films, even. It looks that good.
Yeah. And, a lot of times when they'll kind of like shoot back to showing scenes of the Razor Crest in the bay, or even just in that hangar of that bay, you can kind of see space in the background and sort of like the sea of stars in the back. And it's just so incredible to see it. Right now, of course, Din and Grogu are on the run. And Din is accepting jobs, I guess, that he wouldn't normally accept. And I think that his level of screening of jobs, that just has to go out the window now, doesn't it?
Yeah, and the fact that his ship could only get repaired so much on Tatooine, because he wouldn't allow the droids to work on it. She's like, well, I did my best. So it's almost like, he's also here because he needs to get a little bit of a polish on it, so to speak.
He really does. And although the outside perhaps may not look worse for wear, we do learn during the episode that the ship itself is not in perfect running order. And to be honest with you, I'm sure in the past he's kept it in tip-top shape, in great condition. But right now he's in a bit of a pinch. So he's here to meet Ranzar Mike. And I don't know if I'm saying his name right. It seems like this gentleman and him have done jobs before, but it's been a long time. And that would indicate to me that maybe he kind of didn't necessarily want to meet this guy again, but this is, a situation where things are kind of dire for him.
Yeah, and you could tell that they're type of, in a way, fair weather friends, because Mike isn't really surprised to see him or related. It's like, oh, hey, you're here, a bit convenient that the Razor Crest shows up right when Mike needs it, admittedly. But I just find that kind of funny that because he needs the money to better repair jobs. And it's like, if you hadn't been prejudicial against those droids, that maybe the pit droids could have fixed it, you wouldn't have to go on this whole little escapade, which has all sorts of ramifications. Mostly good ones, though, surprisingly.
Certainly. And those droids, he really actually probably needs one just on the ship to maintain some of the parts. But he's averse to having any kind of droid near him. And so, that wouldn't be an option. He's already asked Kuil to be a member of the team. And Kuil says, I spent like 300 years, in imperial slavery. There's no way I'm going to kind of, I just can't do that right now. I need to stay here and kind of, finish my life here. And so, he's trying to recruit people or at least try to recruit someone who he thought would be skillful enough to repair the crest. But Queel's like, I've had enough of that in my life. So Din is here on this job, and it's a busy station, isn't it? All those ships in there. There's a lot of activity going on. Like you said, we can see, it's a shipyard and people are getting repairs done, but there's a lot of comings and goings, and it is busy. Like this gentleman is doing good business, isn't he?
Yeah, he's very well off, and you could tell that because there's no planets anywhere near here, he's deliberately way off the beaten path, which is not really surprising given the illicit stuff he's up to.
Definitely. And so, interestingly enough, I'm not quite sure whether he built this station or maybe he acquired it through many years, maybe 20 or 30 years of planning and carefully saving. But he has this great station. It's in the middle of nowhere. Din manages to find it, has accepted a job. And honestly, what's really interesting about it is, when Din does see him, and ironically, some of the other members, there isn't that jovial welcoming you get when you haven't seen a person for a long time. And so I think that that's very interesting. I think it's an indication of Din being on his guard, but also, Mink being on his guard as well. We see that right away, you know, uh, or if I can even say this is correct, um, we find out right away, and much to Din's dismay, that the Razor Crest is going to be used in the job.
Yeah, you could tell that his whole vibe with these people is that he just kind of snuck away. They didn't really know he was leaving, and they're kind of not really impressed to see him again. I like the little exchange that he has with the Bill Burr character, where he's like, "Oh, you're a sniper," and the apprentice, I ain't saying much. He's like, "I wasn't a stormtrooper, wise ass." I'm like, okay, I like that kind of that little in-universe critique of what fans have always mentioned, that the stormtroopers can't shoot, and it's like, okay, that's funny. But you could tell that this gang of people are basically a bunch of dimwits. You have the guy who's like literally the dumb muscle, the Dvorkian there. You have the droid, which Din really doesn't trust, who they want to be the driver because they're like, hey, he's a better pilot than you. And then you have this Twi'lek girl who shows up who's a bit obnoxious, and she hints it almost like she had a relationship with Din. I'm not sure how that flies, considering that they don't take off their helmets or they don't really share. Like, he was very reluctant to even share anything about himself with the woman on the planet a couple episodes ago, even though he seemed to be bonding with her. Whereas this person just seems so nutty and crazy. I'm like, really? You were with this person? And I just had a hard time imagining what circumstances could have led him to be running with these guys in the first place, and for how long. It's like, did you fall out of favor with your fellow what is the Watch, the Children of the Watch cult, and then just kind of did this for a while? I mean, it's almost like he's the adult and he's remembering the crazy stuff he did in his 20s. It's like he grew up and they didn't.
Well, that's kind of very interesting when we think about this, because, of course, he's obviously a man who's in his 40s, and, he's a mature man now. And so is Zian, I think is her name. And, clearly she's been around the block. She's cunning. She's and you're right, there is sort of a crackpot feel to the group, but she's perhaps a bit of a manipulator. And I think honestly she's a Twi'lek, so they're very desirable woman. She still looks very good. She's very attractive, and she knows that, and she will use whatever she has to use in order to get what she wants. So she has that extra advantage of how she looks, probably gotten her into a few doors, whereas maybe the Berg may not necessarily be able to just go wherever he wants to go. And so perhaps she might have gained Din's faith a little bit. But he's not a fool. But I also think that, if the opportunity were to arise and they had a relationship, I would find it very hard to believe that it would be anything that would last very long. But we do have to consider the idea that, Mandalorians have relationships, they have families. And so, this is a part of his life that we know nothing about. And it's very intriguing to think of him kind of, finding the right woman and, perhaps going on with his life. And maybe he has, we just don't really know that much about him. Certainly, I don't think he would ever abandon his own family, but we know that being a Mandalorian is not easy, especially when it comes to relationships. So, maybe she has seen a little bit more of him than everyone else has. And I'm gonna kind of leave it at that. But the other thing that I was going to say is, I love when Mayfield describes, he has to come back with some sort of a cheap shot because, he didn't like Din saying that, comparing him to a stormtrooper more or less. And I did actually want to ask you just a little bit about this because, he was described as a former Imperial sharpshooter. I know nothing about these guys. Din said it's not saying much, but clearly it was very important. What do we know about them? Do we know anything about Imperial sharpshooters.
No, but I take it that it's just another division because the stormtroopers, you don't usually see them carrying like big rifles, with the exception of the ones in the original movie who went to Tatooine and they had those huge rifles, but they didn't seem to have like big scopes on him and everything. Whereas he's kind of more of a Mayfeld's more of a sniper, and we get to see that later on in season 2. So I guess that's just another division that's significantly better than these, the run of the mill stormtroopers.
Yeah, and I'm almost getting the sense, although I don't know if it's true, maybe he was special forces like in the division. This guy's like maybe not a SEAL, but yeah, maybe one of those operators, an operator, so to speak.
Yeah,
and
somewhere along the lines of a death trooper or something. Who seems they seem to be a bit more, high end and intimidating.
Definitely. And Mayfield kind of proves his worth with his knowledge just generally of, let's say, the New Republic and of the old Imperial. He kind of knows a lot, and that's just stuff you can't buy that information, right? Like you couldn't say, hey, give me the codes, or what do I do in this? You can't get that, but Mayfield knows what to do. He also makes this crackpot about comparing the Razor Crest to a Canobot slot machine, which I loved. It's like, gee, what does the Razor Crest actually look like? Well, it looks like a troop carrier or some kind of weapons transport, or, and so he kind of like, compared it to something that a person would throw some coins in and expect to win or lose or whatever. And, that's clearly underestimating the power of the ship, because this is the key to the entire operation, isn't it?
Yeah, because if it's so old that it doesn't line up with modern New Republic chain codes and other IDs, so they could have a bit more stealth craft to it, and maneuverability.
It's got incredible maneuverability. I had no idea, like, of course, watching this, they're in space and they can do things that obviously we can't, but I had no idea of what they were expecting. When they showed the computer graphic, I felt like I was watching, like watching Entrapment, that movie where they had all these lasers kind of pointing in different directions, and Catherine Zeta-Jones had to kind of snake her way through the lasers. And I said, this configuration of flight pattern doesn't even make any sense. But to Zero, who is the droid that's assigned to the Razor Crest to actually pilot it, it makes total sense. And he's not ashamed to tell everybody how great he is he?
No, and how much he thinks the ship is rather primitive for his tastes. And Din doesn't really like that very much, and especially doesn't like him driving the ship. But the others kind of, keep Din occupied down below deck, which is a good thing considering that they accidentally discover Grogu. And it's like they immediately start playing around with him and, treating him like they're going to toss the football. And I'm like, okay, Din Djarin has been shown to be a guy who doesn't have much patience. Like when it comes to Jawas, he incinerates them. When he went to track down Grogu to begin with, he just kills all those guys. Throughout this whole episode, he shows an incredible amount of patience with these people. I mean, I get that he used to run with them and they were friends, but he clearly does not respect them anymore. And I kept just kind of in my mind taking like these mental notes. It's like, see, they tried to rip off your helmet because they wanted to see what was underneath and teasing him about that. They hurt the baby because the baby does fall and injure, when the ship gets hit. And then other things happen coming up in this episode. I'm like, okay, you're checking all the boxes. Why are you still sticking your neck out for these people?
Yes, and some other interesting things to add to what you're saying is the fact that Din knows he's walking into a trap, and he always knows this because he's constantly being pursued. So he has to constantly watch his back. So this isn't him kind of like ignorantly walking into this. He knows at any moment he could be double crossed, and that's okay. It's okay. In fact, I think there's a scene where someone says, I don't trust anybody. I think it might have been his friend, the one who called him on the job. And that was such a big clue, because it's telling you right there that we cannot trust, anything that happens from this point forward. Everything is untrue. And we just have to kind of like, this is, I said, this is like, playing a game, and you just really have to treat it as if you're playing a game each time, reassessing, what cards you have. But are they impressed with Din, or are they really scared of him?
They're secretly, they might be afraid. I kind of think they're just really too dumb to recognize a Mandalorian when they see one. Because the fact that he tells them in the beginning when they tell him what the job is, he's like, no, I don't need any New Republic heat chasing you down. Like, it's not going to be a problem because the Razor Crest has got the cloaking device. It's like, doesn't matter if it's a cloaking device. He wants to storm a New Republic prison ship. And, Din he has his own moral code, so he's not intending to run around and kill a bunch of people, but he's not really interested in going on this job. And the fact that Mikey told him that, okay, this job, it's a no questions asked job. So in addition to saying I don't trust anybody and it's a no questions asked thing, that's even a bigger clue for Din that, okay, this is definitely not going to go the way I planned. They just want the ship. That's all they care about. So I think they're just really stupid, or like the big dumb muscly guy. Of course he's going to feel insecure and has to make himself seem tougher in front of Mando, which is why he tries to pry his helmet off. And the others just keep teasing him about it, like, and it feels like we're in high school again or something.
Yes, it does feel that way. Like, so was that your boyfriend? So what happened between you two? Like,
yeah, and when they finally get on the ship, we just see a succession of these bozos just failing over and over again, and Din Djarin repeatedly having to bail them out. And you would think that they would learn that, okay, we should at least rely on this guy and let him take the leadership position until we get what we want. But no, they keep sabotaging things. Like when Din sees the assassin droids or I guess the prison guard droids rolling around, he tells them, he tries to run points on it, and they're like, oh no, they're gonna, and it just goes all to hell. And so, yeah, I think these people are just genuinely really stupid. And since they have their plan doesn't even make that much sense anyway. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, we're going to storm the ship. We're going to, we find out that they're there to do something, but we know, like you said, that they're planning on betraying Din. And it seems like if they're dumb enough to think that that he's no good, then it's like, why haven't they killed him yet? And leaving him, let alone leaving him alive. The fact that they think it's a good idea to betray a Mandalorian and just leave him alive for later tells you that these aren't smart people, that they don't understand what they're in way over their head.
They are in way over their head. Essentially what's happened is that Mayfield is supposedly in charge of the group. And, Din points out that what they're actually doing is breaking into a maximum security transport. And essentially, it's hell to pay if they get caught doing this. Like, they'll end up in the transport. And, Din doesn't want to have anything to do with this. He's trying to keep a low profile, and yet they're forcing him into a situation that's actually very high profile. And they are aware of this, and they're actually hoping that Din gets caught, aren't they?
Yeah, they're kind of hoping that would happen at some point, or that he would get killed by the police droids. And it comes to a head sort of when they get into the main central hub of this transport, and they get in a Mexican standoff with this kid who's like, looks really scared, and he's way over. It's like, okay, you clearly didn't expect people to come through here and knock down all the security robots. And this guy's actually played by Matt Lanter, who voiced Anakin in the Clone Wars, which is pretty cool. Yes. And Din is advocating for not killing the kid. Just let's talk to him and we'll get what we want. But Mayfeld being the whole big guy about it, and just kind of escalates the situation even further to the point that the kid triggers the alarm. So now they're going to be in trouble. And the kid gets killed anyway, and Din is very upset about that because he's like, "You idiots! Now we're really in trouble, and we got to get the heck out of here."
No, this is very important, and ironically, he's really just an innocent kid. I mean, he's in charge of the ship, but it's the sentry droids that are keeping all the prisoners in check, and he doesn't have any contact with anybody, let alone people coming in to try and take a prisoner or whatever away. So this kid is just, like, he's not going to make it. I mean, it's really, he's in a bad way, and Mando's kind of like fighting for him. Don't you want to live, kid? Don't you want to live? And it's kind of like, he's not going to make it, and he doesn't. And what I think is really interesting about this is that, and when they first started the mission, this whole thing got screwed up because, or at least in my opinion, is because the intel was so bad. And what's ironic about this is that I think that Zero was well aware that there was a person on that ship. But, just my personal feelings, I think that he knew a lot more about this transport than everybody else did because he's a droid. But he didn't share a lot of the information, and he didn't share it just maybe solely because he wasn't ordered to, not because he has some sort of malicious plan. But you really want a droid who is, I guess, helping you lead a mission to be fully disclose information. And, as a former Imperial droid, which I guess Zero probably is, because I don't think the New Republic built Zero, he actually probably has like protocols in place that, he's not going to tell you more than what he has to. Yes, you're telling him to go ahead and fly the ship and do this stuff and keep us on comms. But what should have happened if he was a real droid or a protector droid or part of the team is that he should have joined them on the ship when they got in trouble and tried to help them get out. But he didn't do anything like that. And I find that very interesting as well. Why was it so important for Zero to self-preserve himself? Droids are not, because he was ordered to do that. Don't get off the ship. Even if they get in trouble, don't go and rescue them. Make sure you bring whoever is supposed to be coming back. So, he can be very, very dangerous in regards to that. And I kind of liken him to like Hal, where he won't open those doors for you, he's really kind of has these other protocols that are in place. So you are correct about how they get into this Mexican standoff. And they really think that they have Din under their thumb, don't they?
They do, and Din almost succeeds in getting the kid to do what he wants, but it's his ex-girlfriend person who deliberately escalates things because she wants to. It seems like she deliberately wants to antagonize Din. She wants to get a reaction out of him. It's like, really, you want to do? Which again shows how stupid these people are. That this will be easy, and they probably figured that because the cell doors, admittedly, there's no possible way a prisoner can get out of these cell doors. That it'll be easy. Then they must have light security because you can't get out. It's like, well, no, because those big sentry droids are there. And so when we finally find out that the reason they're here is to spring her brother, who he is, according to him, Din betrayed him in the past and left him be. Right? Maybe that's true. Maybe it isn't. It's probably true insofar as Din is like, okay, you guys are dumb. I'm out of here. But it's like, it's like, Din, what? Don't go. Once you see that they're opening the door trying to get this guy out, you should know what's going to happen next. It's like you've gotten all of the defenses on this ship, shut down or destroyed. They have your ship. They like it. They obviously want to keep it. And yet Din kind of lets his guard down and, gets shoved into the shell and the cell door is locked.
And the mistake that they made, at least for me, is that they locked him in there with all his weapons.
Yeah, all his weapons and his gizmos, and also that they left him alive. It's like, are they thinking that, oh, well, when the New Republic discovers the ship, they're never going to believe a Mandalorian story. It's like, okay, but if you think the Mandalorian is dumb and not that intelligent or that successful, then by that logic, the New Republic would probably believe Din Djarin's story that he got shanghaied and the whole ship was besieged. So, and of course would come hunt them down. But again, they don't value him. They think he's an idiot. And so they think it's a good idea to just betray a Mandalorian and just, it'll be no problem. Let's leave him in the cell. So people are just asking for it,
They really are. And, it's very interesting too, because, honestly, I have to be honest with you, Catherine, when they locked Din into that cell, I thought that was it for him. But one of my friends says, you should never doubt that a Mandalorian can get out of a cell when he has all his gear. Yep. Now, if he was stripped, had, like maybe his hand in deadbolt or something, then we could say, oh, he's in real trouble. Like he may not be able to get out of this, but he truly had, all his weapons, and that's what he uses to get out. And honestly, what I really loved about this scene is that his first reaction was not to go after everybody. His first reaction was to go to the bridge. Now, I wouldn't have guessed to do that, but he realized that they're so foolish that they didn't anticipate the opportunity or even the chance that he might escape. And so he knows from the command center, he can go ahead and shut things down on the vessel, do all sorts of stuff. And we see him pick up that that Republic beacon. And that's when I started to get a smile on my face.
Well, yeah, and we see, and you knew that that's the first place he was going to go because the ship, as we saw, is completely automated. And the way that he even broke out of the cell was kind of unique as well. The way he said that droid used the magnet, unlock the door was pretty cool. And so once he shuts down the main lights and it becomes like all, red tiered infrared type of thing, it's like, okay, this feels like I'm getting Predator vibes now. He's going to go hunt them down one by one, and it gets all horror-esque sort of as he meticulously gets them one by one. And it's funny with the edit, they trick you into thinking that he's killing each of these people, which would make sense because it's like, again, they tried to take off his helmet, they injured the baby, they are stealing his ship, and they've shanghaied him and left it. It's like, dude, you killed the Jawas for less. You killed other bounty. You are entitled at this point to just off these people. And in particular, I thought it was clever when he had to face off against the big dumb muscle guy, because it's like he actually seemed to be outmatched in that situation.
Yes, and he, cleverly says, I can't beat this guy up. but a door can, or perhaps, like a heavy cannon can, or something really strong that Din doesn't possess. And, Mandalorians are known for using weapons or whatever to improvise to get out of a situation. He can't fly out of there. So it has to be something around him that he uses. And I did want to ask you about this thing that happens between, let's say, Grogu and Zero. Grogu has already kind of like had a tough introduction to this kind of nasty crowd of people. And I'm surprised. If I were him, I just would have stayed in the compartment. But Grogu feels the need to, spread his wings and walk around the Razor Crest, which I imagine he does all the time. Din is sleeping. Grogu is walking around the Razor Crest, like exploring. And he sees Zero. And we already know that Zero intercepted the message that Grief Karga sent to Mando. We already know that. But from what I understand, or from what I've been told, someone had mentioned to me, and I don't know if it's true. This may not be true. So this is, for anybody who's watching this, I cannot confirm this. But from what I was told, that Zero has Imperial protocols, inside of him. And when he saw Grogu, he recognized him. And that's why he picked up the gun and was going to, I guess, maybe kill Grogu or do something with Grogu. And that really bothered me too, Catherine.
Because, he saw the message from Grief Karga, hey, you're good if you just bring the kid. And he may have checked, okay, who's this kid? Finds it out on the bounty and sees, oh, okay, so this kid's worth money. All I have to do is kill him. And he may have even abandoned the other bozos if given the opportunity, because, I mean, if he can recognize that this is like you mentioned, he has to have some type of programming to recognize this. So then he would probably, I'll go play for the Empire now. Just like that was kind of interesting. And because they tease you throughout the episode that there's a message coming in, and we're like, ooh, something's going to happen. And so once Din is done dealing with the bozos, I like how when he brings the door down on the one guy, he actually is so strong, he lifts it back up, and you think he's going to get out of it, and then just the sideways. And it's funny that it ends up being just him and the prisoner who they came to rescue, and the prisoner doesn't care about the fact that Din trapped his sister. He just decides to give up on her because he's just that callous of a person, and they decide, okay, we'll just be partners. Who cares? And they go to leave, and it's like. Of course, now that Din has once again found himself in a situation where a droid is ready to kill Grogu, he does the same thing he did last time, which is he just pops the droid, and that further reinforces his opinion that droids are evil, which isn't really a good thing, or that all droids are evil as he's thinking. And so they take off, getting away in the nick of time, which is pretty cool. But I was also wondering, it's like, okay, I couldn't figure out. There had to be. I assumed there was going to be something special about this prisoner because. These bozos are certainly risking a lot for just another one of the gang. And maybe he knew something that they wanted from him, because they don't certainly seem like nice people who would do this. Oh, I guess we'll save your boyfriend just because.
And that's a very good point. Something that I've wondered about, and, we clearly see that when Din brings the beacon back and he kind of leaves it with Ken. Is it Quinn? With Quinn. Quinn is like, well, what is this? And clearly anybody in the galaxy knows that that's a beacon. Like I would have picked that thing out and I'm not bringing this with me, it's a beacon, and clearly it's a big deal. But Quinn was not in the control room in the bridge when it was activated by Devan. And so he doesn't realize that it's going to bring the Republic there. But what I really liked was when the Republic showed up and Din is kind of like maneuvering the Razor Crest out of the way. He's kind of like swoop around and kind of like, oh, look, they're coming out of hyperspace. Let me get out of here, And I guess maybe they didn't see him, or he was just too quick. It's possible they didn't see him just coming out of hyperspace. They may not have had full view. So he narrowly escapes. And in the hangar bay, you can see Quinn kind of running. And I think that Mink got away too. I think they got away. It was a bad explosion, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's in a pod somewhere,
Right, because, they get back, and I find it funny also, Mink walks up to him, and he's like, where's everybody else? And he's like, no questions asked. Oh, okay, it's fine. And it begs the question also why they want to bother killing him. It's like, hey, it worked out. You got the guy back you wanted to get back. It's like, yeah, you lost everybody else. He didn't seem too upset about it. So it's like, why bother killing him? to be petty. I mean, it just that could be an asset you could use later on, but no, they decide they want to kill him, and so that was a great little bit. And I did wonder whether or not they made it out as well, because they made a point of not, like you said, they're running and they cut away before the explosion goes off. But then of course the big surprise at the end is that he left these people alive, which again seems really dumb, because of course these people are so stupid that no New Republic policeman or whatever is going to believe that these bozos pulled this off on their own. Like, they'll believe their story when they say, "Oh, it was the Mandalorian who did it," And sure enough, as we'll find out in season 2, they do believe them. And it just sounded interesting that he kept giving him these chances. It's like, I mean, because again, he's been shown to be very ruthless, Din, with all people. It's like, what more do these people have to do for you to just? And the fact that he brought the beacon back, probably fully knowing what was going to happen, and they're going to blow this place to smithereens, but he still went out of his way to save those people, which is interesting.
It is very interesting, and he certainly could have just kind of done away with them, or put them out into space, or something like that. I think it's very interesting that he decided to do that. I had one other question that I did want to ask you, Catherine, so I'm just scrolling. Oh, I really liked the fact that while the group were in the Razor Crest on their way to the mission, that they made a point of, it seems at some point Mayfield feels like he might have gone too far, because, he's like, okay, calm down. We got this mission to do. And, as they're talking and they're looking at the Mandalorian, sort of giving him cheap shots, they actually present a really good question. And the question was, if Mandalorians are the greatest fighters in the galaxy, then why are they all dead? And I really liked that part, because I think a lot of people, maybe not like people in the fandom, but people who do see Star Wars and may not, be into the fandom as much as you and I are into it, may ask these questions, like, what happened to them? And there are a lot of things about this, but one thing that I really did like is, or at least trying to figure out what happened to them. And, there are so many things that have led to their demise. But despite that fact, despite all the fighting, there are still Mandalorians around. And of course, perhaps these guys haven't seen Mandalorians, but there's probably millions of them around. At least this is my speculation, is that there's probably millions of Mandalorians in the galaxy. But maybe like the Children of the Watch, they keep a low profile, or like Bo-Katan, where she keeps her crew, in a special place. We don't get to see them all the time, but maybe they're on a spaceship or whatever. They are out there. And so, I think that it's very interesting that there's that belief that they're not there anymore. And so that, hence that question arising. And of course, we find that to not be the case. And I think that we'll even see that even more as the series goes on. But I felt that was pretty important. And I think that, it fed into a bunch of other misconceptions that or just ignorance that a lot of the characters have. They just don't know. They may not have been around during the Purge of Mandalore. There's just so much that goes into the law of, that entire group. Now, what did you think? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think that, like you said, the reason I think they have him ask that question, if they're so great, why are they all dead, is to signal to casual fans that there's a reason you're not seeing them in any of the big movies. Like, if they haven't watched the Clone Wars or Rebels TV series, then this is their first time seeing it. So hence why it's titled The Mandalorian, and they're learning about these different factions, and they learn about, of course, the rumor that, oh, you can't go back to Mandalore, it's a wasteland, and that kind of thing. And so it's clearly a setup for the fact that you're going to find more Mandalorians and get that question answered, what happened to them. Because we've never actually seen the Purge of Mandalore in any of the TV series so far. We've seen the aftermath of it in Rebels, where certain Mandalorian factions were allowed to stay in this quasi positions of power as long as they were loyal to the Empire, and how they were just in constant states of civil war during the Clone Wars and shortly afterwards. So I think we're going to get that question introduced later on, because again, clearly Din Djarin is very skilled at what he does, even though he's got plenty of flaws. So I think especially with the way season 2 ends, I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of them in season 3.
Yes, definitely. And so, I think that this particular episode, I really loved this episode. And as I said earlier, and there were so many things about it. It's nice and fast paced. Even when you get to the point where the beacon is set off and they have 20 minutes, I don't know whether it's at the 20-minute point in the episode or 20 minutes left, but it actually kind of times itself out to like 20 minutes and then 10 minutes, just like as if the beacon was going along.
Yeah.
And also, what else was I going to ask? Now we know, because we have seen season 2, that what happens to some of the characters in this episode. But, I imagine, they're all in prison and, just as if Quinn was there, but now they've kind of switched places with him. And, we know Mayfield plays a role later on, but in actuality, he might have been, the person in the group. I can see why he was put in charge by Mike, because he's the person who has the most knowledge of how things run. And even with his knowledge, I don't think he could have anticipated there was a person in the bridge, but with his knowledge, do you recall that he was the one who said, oh, by the way, that beacon goes off and they're going to be here, like he knew what was going to happen, and I thought to myself, gee, how does he know? Of course he knows, because he's done all these protocols. He's probably spent 20 or 30 years, seeing how the Empire runs. Even the Republic probably adopted a lot of the same protocols, or used, standard protocols that you would use in space. So he knows a lot of that. And that's somebody who ideally you would want to have on a mission with you, especially if the mission is a little outside of the box, like this one was.
Well, yeah, that's also why Din was so keen on them not killing the kid, because it's like, we can't let him hit that button. And the dimwit ex-girlfriend character, she didn't seem to understand that. It was just being very playful and stupid, which is why I guess we don't see her again in season 2. It's like, I can't imagine that Mayfeld would be very happy with her either, after, causing that beacon to go off, given what happened. So yeah, that's kind of it. That this episode basically exists for the purpose of laying groundwork for callbacks later on. And I found those characters just unbearably obnoxious. I was so happy when he started getting rid of them. I was like, yes, please don't let them carry on through this series. I can't. It's like following the dimwit in the previous episode, the wannabe bounty hunter, how obnoxious he was, and then to follow like, oh, how do we follow that? I don't know, we'll have like 5 or 6 of these people. It's like, no more, please.
It certainly was a test of his patience, as you said, but it also showed us the potential of the Razor Crest. It showed us the potential of, Din's superior strategic methods. He was getting out of this. And I think that even in his mind, even though they had other plans, in his mind, he convinced himself, no matter what they throw at me, I'm going to get out of this. And this is how this is going to go down. So, I'm assuming
that's a great mystery again as to his backstory some more, the fact that he did kind of have a girlfriend, that he did used to run with some more unscrupulous, unskilled characters, that, that they do kind of have an uneasy relationship. And I guess there might be some truth to what Quinn was saying, that, oh, you betrayed me, because the fact that they're so keen on just getting rid of Din Djarin and, leaving him for lost. I guess that Quinn must have had a stronger relationship with this gang than Din ever did. And yet, the Mike guy, I love that character, even though he doesn't go on the mission, unfortunately. It's like, yeah, I hope he found a way out to survive. That would be a shame if he was like a one and done character.
Yeah, I think we both agree that he probably had some special escape route. He saw that. And I also think Quinn might make it out, if he's fast enough, clever enough to jump or shove himself into, Mike's escape pod or something, and they get out of there. But we did get a chance to see Dave Filoni in this episode. He plays one of the Republic fighters, which was also very cool. And, honestly, Catherine, I didn't know they were going to blow up this spaceship.
Yeah, it seems kind of vicious. It's like, oh, judge, jury, and executioner. I mean, presumably they'd probably visited the prison ship already and seen what happened there. And now that they know that, okay, one of their guys is killed, there was a prison break that didn't go very well. It's like, well, only one prisoner is missing, but we gained like 5. so
it's a fair exchange.
Yeah, fair exchange. But to just immediately, we don't want to interrogate these people or to find out. We're just going to blow this place to smithereens. And it's like, man, that's pretty crazy. Because, wasn't there a ship that Quinn was trying to get into that he was like, that was in the hangar when they were trying to get out? So maybe he did get out. But I just thought that was really like, wow, that's kind of vicious, which is odd considering that these same 2 pilots will later make the choice to actually talk to Din as opposed to just immediately trying to kill. Well, I guess they tried to shoot him out of the sky later on, but they do show some patience to talk to him later on, as opposed to just, whereas what they did here was just, oh man, because who knows how many other, like you said, that was a really hopping place. There's probably a lot of other people in there who might not have all been guilty, because you could tell that even in the safety of that ship that Mikey was trying to be very hush hush about the job they were talking about, as if maybe not everything going on there was illicit. And so it's like, man, that's pretty brutal.
It was very brutal, and I guess one of these days we'll get an explanation as to why that happened, unless I'm supposed to believe that the Republic is just heavy-handed now, and they're like, F it, let's just blow it up. Let's just get rid of it. We don't have to deal with it later. But they seem to be very gentle with Mando, as we see going forward, at least in my opinion. They want to know what he knows, and I have a feeling that they want him on their side, although it's very unrealistic to expect Mando to do that. I think it was realistic to expect Cara to do that. I think that was very realistic. But yeah. I think it's very unrealistic to expect Mando to do that, because, that's just not part of his way. But for Cara, who really kind of like, that's in her blood almost. And, people have talked about how, there's that whole thing with her and Alderaan, and how important it is for her to, kind of continue to fight no matter what, because of what happened to her planet. I think it's very interesting to kind of look at it from that perspective.
Speaking of which, I wonder what it would have been like if she was here for this episode. Would she have gone along with the mission, or was she just, laid waste to all those guys in the hangar the minute they brought it up?
Well, it's a good point. I have a feeling they might have had a few less limbs left, for sure. Knowing her, and this is why I was asking you before about, let's say, the fighting experience or between Cara versus Mando, because Mando isn't out there fighting wars. He's doing bounty hunting, and maybe, let's say hypothetically he has to fight a few people every now and then, but Cara was a soldier where that's all she did. And so I was just kind of curious as to, like, in regards to skills, her being a dropper, and, maybe even presumably she might have been on many more worlds than him. I'm not saying he isn't well versed and traveled to different places, but her purpose for going to a place is very different than for him trying to get the job done. You remember, they landed on that prison ship. They didn't want to make a big noise. That was the intention. And so for her, they're probably like, we're in and out, and if it gets crazy, this is what we're going to, they plan for every, possible scenario. So, it's very interesting to kind of look at that. And I think that this episode was a win. It was filled with, kind of fun situations. My final thing I was going to say, I thought it was very funny when Grogu was discovered, and Mayfield does, come out with the comment about, well, did you two make that? He's got a lot of wit, but he knows how to play the game. And I'm sure he's made a lot more friends than, let's say, Zian would make, or Berg would make, or even Mando would make, because he knows that he has to win over Imperial officers or Republic officers or whomever to get the information he wants. And I kind of think that, he might have been somebody good to kind of lead, of course he's a prisoner and has a record, but if he didn't have that record, if he had, wasn't involved in illegal activity, he might have made a good person for the Republic series. Like, he might have been an ideal kind of leader for that. So I always look at things like that and try to figure out, where a person might end up just by pure circumstance. But I really love this episode. Any final thoughts on this episode, Catherine?
Yeah, I think it's just, again, it's another stepping stone. That's, another diversion to set up things for later. And I take it that, the fact that they do bring back those two X-Wing pilots were intending to set up, Rangers of the New Republic, which won't happen now. But, and I think there was mentioned in one of the episodes that they're really not very well supplied, like the Rangers themselves, like when they're out in the Outer Rim. Maybe that's why they were extra vicious, because it's like, oh, we're not going to get the resources to come back and investigate this or something. But yeah, it's just kind of interesting to see that parallel, that, oh, okay, so they're just as, because these were New Republic responders, but they're also flying X-Wings, which are kind of more resistance, whereas the Republic sort of evolves technology from the Empire, sort of like the Empire evolved technology from the Old Republic. So that's kind of interesting that they're now integrating the Rebel Alliance equipment, which is neat to see. But yeah, I figured that, once, and again, once Din leaves, it's like, what did you really get out of this? Because it's like he didn't get the. He's like, did he? I can't remember. Did Ming pay him before they?
I think he did transfer credits. Yes, I think he transferred credits electronically or something like that, and it was done very quickly. And as soon as Quinn landed on the ship,
right.
Din waited. He was like, "Okay, did you transfer?" And then he got on his ship and left. Waited for the transfer, and I think once the transfer was made, that's when he hopped on and zoomed out of there. But it had to happen quick because that beacon was ticking away. So.
I do hope we do learn more details about why he was with these people to begin with and how that story went down. That'd be interesting to see.
It would be interesting to see. And, of course, my thought, too, is their strategy seemed to be for a long time for Mandos to go out solo versus as a group. So, if he seems like it's just one Mando, it's not as a threat, not as threatening, nor do they know the numbers that exist. But you and I both know it was probably maybe thousands of Mandos that might have been down there. We don't really know for sure, but it would seem to indicate to me. And it also, one other thing that I was going to say that I thought was very interesting is we know that they're still taking in foundlings. So there were so many children in that bunker, and I'm kind of curious as to how they could have such young children, unless they were their own. But I have a feeling that they still take in foundlings. So, regardless of where their travels may lead them, if they do end up in a situation like that, they'll still carry on that practice. So, but I love this episode, and I did just want to thank you for joining me in reviewing Chapter 6 of The Mandalorian. And we're going to end this broadcast, but please join us back for Chapter 7 and 8 for the conclusion of Season 1 of The Mandalorian. And thank you so much for watching this. Catherine, where can people find you?
You can find me at Sly Side at Twitter and Instagram. You can find me every second and fourth Sunday of the month hosting Unifying Force on the Virtual Cantina Network YouTube channel. And you can find me every Wednesday night at 6 p.m. Pacific hosting Martinis, Gadgets, and Guns on the Phantasmagorium Show channel.
That's fantastic. And of course, you can find me here on Positive Fandom. On Monday nights, I'm on Toxic Femininity with Midnight's Edge. And on Fridays during the day, I'm on Midnight's Edge in the morning. And of course, you can find me on the Burnett Network. And I hope this video finds everybody who's watching this well. And remember, be kind. Hold on a second. I'm trying to end it. I'm just trying to close the window. It's not allowing me to close the window. Just 1 second, Catherine.
Yeah, it's still recording too.
Yeah, I opened up that chat window and it's still open. Maybe I can close it another way. All right. Okay. I'll end the link and that should close it out, right?
Maybe. I don't know if it'll save it if you do that. How do you usually end it?
I usually press end broadcast. That's how I save it. So maybe I should just do that.
Yeah, end broadcast should be the way to save. I would imagine if that's what you did last time we did this.
It is. Yeah. Let's see. Oh, maybe that worked. And broadcast. The chat window keeps appearing over where I need to end the broadcast.
There's no way to close the chat window?
I'm trying, but it doesn't seem
Can
to
you
be.
like maybe manually resize the screen so that way it doesn't like maybe
Right.
make the screen smaller or make it bigger?
Let me try. Um, yeah, it's kind of blocking my
It's
my
odd.
ability to end it. This is so weird. Like, this is such a weird day for StreamYard. Okay, let me think. End broadcast. Okay. Maybe it will show up if I minimize for a second. Okay, that did not help. This must be like some kind of